What if I told you that setting boundaries as a man is now considered a crime? Not in the legal sense, but in the eyes of culture, media, and the loudest voices online. When Jonah Hill's private texts to his ex-girlfriend were leaked, texts where he calmly stated his personal standards, the internet lost its mind. They called him controlling, toxic, insecure, abusive. But when you actually read the messages, he didn't yell, he didn't threaten, he didn't manipulate. He said, if you want to post bikini pics, surf with men, and hang out with certain people, that's totally fine, but I'm not the guy for you. That's it. A man expressing his boundaries and choosing to walk away if they're not met, and he gets crucified? Let's be clear. The Jonah Hill backlash wasn't about him. It was about you. It was a warning shot. If you try to lead, protect, or define your own standards, we'll shame you for it. This is Chad, guys, and we're not afraid to talk about what this culture fears the most: masculinity that doesn't apologize. Subscribe if you're done being silenced, and let's get into the truth they don't want you to hear. Let's start with the most twisted part of this whole circus. Jonah Hill didn't demand anything. He didn't say, you can't do this. He said, you're free to do what you want. I just won't be part of it. That's not abuse. That's autonomy. But here's what modern culture hates: male standards. You can have female-only spaces. You can have female expectations. You can have female preferences all day long. But the second a man says, this is what I want, and if I don't get it, I'm out, he's labeled controlling. Why? Because masculinity with conviction is the biggest threat to a system built on chaos. You think this was just about Jonah Hill? No, this was about emasculating all men by example. The message was clear. If Jonah Hill, famous, rich, respected, can be shamed for having preferences, what do you think we'll do to you? It's psychological warfare. Make one man bleed publicly, and the rest will stay quiet. And most men do stay quiet because they've been taught that if they say, I don't date women who post revealing pics, I want to be the leader in my relationship, I expect loyalty, modesty, and respect. They'll be labeled insecure, toxic, or worse, dangerous. But here's the truth. Masculinity isn't dangerous. Weakness masquerading as masculinity is. And this culture has trained men to believe that their strength is something to hide instead of something to hone. Why is it that when a woman says, I won't date a guy under 6 feet who makes less than 100K and doesn't have ambition, everyone claps and calls it empowerment? But when a man says, I want a woman who doesn't post thirst traps on Instagram, he's accused of controlling her body, her voice, her freedom. Because here's what no one wants to admit. A man with standards is harder to manipulate. If you're clear about what you want, you can't be guilt-tripped. You can't be dragged into drama. You can't be controlled by sex or shame. And the modern world depends on men being confused. They want you to doubt yourself, to believe that your standards are selfish. So when Jonah Hill said, this is what I want, and I'll walk away if it's not respected, that wasn't control. That was a threat to their control over him. Jonah wasn't being a dictator. He was being a man with clarity. But here's the problem. Clarity in men today is rare. And when you see it, it either earns respect or triggers resentment. Why? Because most people, especially the loudest critics online, don't have the courage to walk away when their boundaries are crossed. So when they see a man who does, they don't admire him. They attack him because his strength reminds them of their weakness. That's what happened here. This wasn't a reaction to abuse. This was a reaction to power. And power, in the hands of a man who's not easily manipulated, terrifies the system. Let's address the gaslighting head on. Anytime a man sets standards, they say he must be insecure. But what's more insecure? A man who says, these are my values and I'm fine walking away. Or a man who compromises everything just to keep a woman who doesn't respect him. Insecurity isn't setting standards. Insecurity is abandoning yourself to be liked. Jonah didn't beg. He didn't whine. He didn't argue. He laid it out and said, if this isn't for you, we're done. But that's not insecurity. That's integrity. And deep down, most men wish they had the balls to do the same. Why are so many men afraid to lead in relationships? Because leadership requires saying no. It requires protecting your standards. It requires having a spine. And this culture punishes that. If you take the lead, you're bossy. If you say no, you're controlling. If you express your desires, you're insecure. So men default to silence, to passivity, to walking on eggshells. And then they wonder why they feel disrespected, anxious, and disposable. The solution? Be willing to lead anyway. Even if they call you names, even if they call you toxic. Because guess what? Weak men might get tolerated, but strong men get chosen. What Jonah Hill said in those texts, that was red pill clarity in a blue pill world. He wasn't angry. He wasn't insulting. He was clear. And in today's climate, clarity is considered violence. But guess what? Clarity is how real men lead. Clarity is how you build trust. Clarity is how you protect your energy, your mission, and your future. You don't need to be aggressive. You just need to be grounded. Know what you want. Know what you won't tolerate. Say it with calm certainty and walk away the second it's crossed. That's not abuse. That's called having self-respect. You know what modern culture does? It feminizes conflict. It teaches men that any expression of disapproval or discomfort is abusive. You're not allowed to disagree. You're not allowed to be firm. You're not allowed to withdraw. If you do, you're not supportive. You're gaslighting. You're weaponizing silence. But this isn't equality, it's emasculation. Because women are allowed to cut men off with zero explanation, to say, I have my boundaries and walk away without debate. But when a man does the same, suddenly he's toxic. That's not empowerment. That's a double standard. And real men are starting to wake up. Jonah didn't do anything wrong by having standards, but he did make one mistake. He picked a woman who wasn't aligned with his values, and then tried to retrofit the relationship through boundaries. Wrong order. You don't date someone you already know isn't aligned and then try to change them. You vet hard up front and walk away immediately if the red flags show up. This is where most men mess up. They get seduced by looks, attention, and validation, and ignore misalignment. Then 6 months in, they're trying to enforce boundaries on someone who never respected them to begin with. Jonah's texts were calm and reasonable, but they were too late. Pick better, or you'll end up trying to control what should have been cut off. Masculinity is not about dominating others. It's about dominating yourself. And a man without standards is a man without a spine. Boundaries are how you protect your mission. Boundaries are how you filter out chaos. Boundaries are how you build a life that doesn't collapse the second someone disrespects you. The reason they hate masculine boundaries is simple. Masculine boundaries make weak people feel powerless. But your job isn't to make people feel comfortable. It's to make yourself unshakable. If you're not getting pushback from the culture, you're probably not leading anything worth following. So what's the takeaway? No, masculinity isn't literally illegal, but it is socially punished. If you're calm, convicted, and masculine, they'll call you controlling. If you set boundaries, they'll call you toxic. If you walk away, they'll say you're insecure. Let them, because the only men who win in this world are the ones who build their frame and never abandon it. Jonah Hill might have gotten dragged, but he showed the world something powerful, that a man with standards can't be shamed, only seen. And the men who watched, the men who understood, they learned the lesson. You can either shrink to survive or build a frame so strong, no one can break it. This is Chad, guys, where men aren't afraid of judgment. We're afraid of wasting our potential. Subscribe, build the frame, set the standard. Walk away like a man if it's not met. Because at the end of the day, it's not about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself. And that they'll never be able to cancel.